Marley Riven was 30 years old, a gifted graphic designer living in a mid-sized city called Clearwick. Life had always moved at a steady rhythm for her. Work during the week, brunch on weekends, and a quiet love with a man she deeply respected. But tonight felt different. As she stood in the softly lit restaurant surrounded by candlelit tables, fresh floral scents, and the gentle hum of jazz, she couldn't stop smiling. Everything felt perfect. Camel roses bloomed at each table. String lights twinkled above. This was their engagement party, hers and Jalen's. After 4 years of love, patience, and growth, they were finally taking the next step. In just 4 months, they'd be married. Jalen stood beside her, tall and warm, with his hand resting gently on the small of her back. She leaned into him, feeling that familiar calm. They'd met at the design agency where she worked. He had joined the creative department and impressed her not just with his ideas but with how respectfully he listened. A company retreat brought them closer, and their connection unfolded naturally. He was dependable, thoughtful, and intelligent. Everything about him made sense. Now, their closest friends and family had come together to celebrate them. As Marley scanned the room, she saw familiar faces. Co-workers, old college friends, Jalen's parents, even distant cousins she hadn't seen in years. But then her eyes landed on her own family. Her parents, Lorna and Ellis Riven, sat near the front. Their smiles looked too stiff to be real. And her younger sister Rena was there too, scrolling on her phone with disinterest like she couldn't wait to leave. Marley sighed quietly. She and Rena had never been close. And that distance, it had only grown with time. Still, Marley pushed aside the tension building in her chest. Tonight wasn't about old wounds or silent judgments. Tonight was about love, promises, and the life she was building with Jalen. She took a sip of champagne, smiling at a joke one of Jalen's cousins cracked. Lorna, her mother, then stood and gently tapped her wine glass with a spoon. The sound chimed through the air, quieting the room as conversations hushed. All eyes turned toward her. "Can I have everyone's attention, please?" Lorna said with a polite smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "First, I want to say congratulations to my beautiful daughter Marley and her wonderful fiancé Jalen. I hope your marriage is full of love, joy, and happiness." Polite applause followed, and a few guests raised their glasses. Marley felt Jalen gently squeeze her hand under the table. She glanced at him and smiled, touched by the moment. But then her mother continued, and her tone shifted. Cool, calculated, deliberate. "I also have an important announcement to make," Lorna said, setting her glass down on the table. "After talking it over with Ellis, we've decided to give Marley's $45,000 wedding fund to Rena instead." The room went completely still. For a moment, Marley just stared at her mother. She blinked, almost laughing, assuming it was a joke. "That's funny, Mom," she said lightly. "But that money is mine. I'm not giving it away." Lorna's smile fell instantly. Her lips tightened. "This isn't a joke, Marley," she said. "Your sister is getting married a few months after you, and she needs the money more than you do." A wave of heat climbed up Marley's neck. Her stomach twisted. "What are you talking about?" "That's my money, Mom. You and Dad gave it to me. It's in my account." Lorna tilted her head slightly, trying to soften her voice, but her tone only felt condescending. "Honey, you have a good job. So does Jalen. Rena and her fiancé are struggling. She deserves a beautiful wedding too." Marley's hands began to tremble. She stood, trying to steady her voice. "We already planned our wedding around that money. We've been careful. We're even using part of it as a down payment for our home. You can't just take it away now." The tension snapped like a whip as Rena shoved her chair back, nearly knocking over her drink. "Don't be so selfish, Marley," she snapped. "You could have offered to share it a long time ago. You know I need it more than you." Marley turned toward her sister, her jaw clenched. "This isn't about need, Rena. It's about what's fair. Planned ahead. You had your own fund and you blew through it. Now you expect me to just hand mine over." Lorna's voice cut through the air. She lives simply, she barked. She doesn't have much, and her fiancé is doing his best. You've always had more. Because I worked for it. Marley shot back, folding her arms. I was saved. Followed the rules. Planned. I don't care how you try to twist this. I'm not giving up my money. The guests watched in stunned silence, some avoiding eye contact altogether. Jalen reached over and placed a steady hand on her arm, but Marley didn't back down. And then it happened, so fast and yet so surreal. Lorna stepped forward, her face red with fury, and slapped Marley hard across the face. The sound echoed through the restaurant like a thunderclap. The sting bloomed instantly across Marley's cheek, but the emotional blow hit harder. The room froze. Not even a fork moved. Even Rena's mouth hung open in disbelief. Marley slowly turned her head back to her mother, her voice low and controlled. You don't get to hit me just because I said no. A sharp gasp came from someone at a nearby table. Then from the bar area a voice. Yes, hello, I need to report an assault. It happened just now at Lamarck Bistro. It was a waiter speaking into his phone, his eyes wide as he gave details to someone on the other end. The buzz of conversation remained gone, replaced by disbelief, shame, and fear. The sirens came minutes later. Red and blue lights flashed outside the restaurant windows, casting a surreal glow over the guests. Marley stood still, her cheek throbbing, her heart racing. Jalen didn't leave her side. Her father pulled Lorna aside, whispering harshly, trying to get her to calm down. Two uniformed officers entered. One walked over to Marley. Are you the one who was assaulted? He asked gently. Marley nodded. A waiter stepped forward and provided a full account, describing how Lorna had struck Marley in front of all the guests. Lorna insisted it was a private family matter. The officer's response was calm but firm. Public assault, no matter the relationship, is still a crime. He then turned to Marley. Do you want to press charges? Her pulse pounded, but her voice came out clear. Yes, I do. And just like that, Lorna was placed in handcuffs. Lorna didn't scream or fight. She just looked furious. As the officers escorted her out of the restaurant, Rena stared at Marley like she had committed the crime. Ellis followed the officers out, silent and pale. Guests sat stiffly, unsure whether to resume their meals or leave quietly. Marley sat back down, the sting still alive in her cheek. Jalen sat beside her, gripping her hand as if anchoring her to the earth. Later that night, Marley contacted her lawyer. The next day, she filed an official report. The charges were criminal. Lorna was released on bail, but the legal process had already begun. A few weeks later, court proceedings began, not over the wedding money but over the assault. Marley sat in the courtroom while the judge reviewed evidence, including multiple witness statements and the restaurant security footage. The case was airtight. The judge ruled Lorna guilty of misdemeanor assault. She was fined $2,000 and sentenced to 6 months of probation along with mandatory anger management. She was given the option of a 30-day suspended jail sentence, but the message was clear. Her actions had consequences. As Marley watched her mother avoid eye contact from across the courtroom, the judge turned to her. Do you have anything to say before we conclude? Marley stood. Her voice was calm but powerful. I never expected this from my mother. But no one is above the law. After that day, Marley hoped things would settle. But they didn't. The slap wasn't the end of the storm. It was only the beginning. 3 weeks after the engagement party, Marley came home to a thick envelope in her mailbox. Her stomach sank the moment she saw the law firm's name, Denhart and Vale Associates. Inside was a formal lawsuit. Her parents, Lorna and Ellis, were suing her. The claim that the $45,000 wedding fund wasn't truly hers. They argued it had only been meant for college expenses and that she had misused it. Marley laughed bitterly as she read the papers. The money had been in her name since she was 17. In a custodial account they had gifted to her. 19, she received full control. Both she and Rena had been told they could use their funds however they wanted once they were legal adults. The difference was Marley used hers wisely, paying for school with scholarships, then letting the rest grow. Rena had gone to an expensive private university, dropped out, and spent the rest launching a boutique that flopped within a year. Now, because her fund was gone, they were after Marley's. She hired a composed, razor-sharp attorney named Dahlia Voss. After reviewing the documents, Dahlia smiled. They don't have a case. Marley leaned forward. Then why are they doing this? Dahlia replied calmly. Some people would rather tear you down than admit they made a mistake, especially when they're trying to protect someone else. And with that, the truth became painfully clear. This wasn't about fairness or legal grounds. It was about control, about favoritism, about making Marley pay for her sister's poor choices. The following months were some of the most draining Marley had ever known. Between court hearings, document requests, and legal expenses, the wedding plans had to be put on hold. Her mind was constantly occupied with filings and statements. Every time she walked into the courtroom and saw her parents sitting next to Rena, avoiding her gaze, it was like being punched in the chest. Rena, ever smug, looked like she was confident she'd win, like she deserved to. During one heated court session, Rena took the stand. She tried to claim the fund was strictly meant for school. Dahlia rose and asked, "Did you use your fund only for college?" Rena hesitated. "Not all of it." Dahlia pressed on. "You dropped out, didn't you? And used the remaining money to start a boutique and buy a luxury car." "That's not relevant," Rena snapped. "It's very relevant," Dahlia said coolly. "If your fund had such strict conditions, why were you allowed to use it however you wanted?" Rena fell silent. The courtroom absorbed every word. Marley sat still, heart steady, watching it all unfold. The truth was unraveling. The favoritism, the lies, the desperate attempt to save face by punishing the daughter who had done everything right. Outside the courthouse, Jalen remained Marley's rock. He never missed a single hearing. He held her hand through every twist, every ambush. "They don't get to steal your future," he whispered to her one night. "They can't." But it was taking a toll. Wedding decisions had to be postponed. Legal fees piled up. Marley lost sleep. She cried, sometimes alone in the bathroom, sometimes at her desk between deadlines. Still, she refused to quit. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about dignity, about standing tall, even when your own family tried to break you. Just when she thought things couldn't get worse, they did. One afternoon, while finalizing floral orders, her phone buzzed. It was her cousin Tessa. "Marley, I'm so sorry to hear your wedding was cancelled." "What are you talking about?" Marley asked, stunned. "The wedding's still on." Tessa hesitated. "Your mom called me last week. She said you and Jalen broke up. That he cheated on you." Marley's mouth fell open. Within an hour, she got 3 more calls from confused relatives. Some even mentioned receiving emails announcing the wedding had been called off. Marley rushed to her inbox. No such emails existed in her sent folder, which meant someone had created a fake account to impersonate her. Her heart dropped. Her first thought, Rena. She had no proof, but the pattern was all too familiar. Sabotage, manipulation, lies. Marley called her aunt, Lorna's sister, Yvette. "I was about to call you," Yvette said with a sigh. "Your mother's telling people the wedding was a lie. That Jalen cheated. That you made it all up." Marley closed her eyes, the pain blooming all over again. "She's protecting Rena," Yvette continued quietly. "She always has. Even when Rena didn't deserve it." The betrayal stung worse than any courtroom exchange. Lorna wasn't just trying to win a case. She was trying to ruin her daughter's reputation. That evening, Jalen walked in and immediately noticed Marley's shaken expression. "What happened?" he asked. Marley showed him the screenshots and explained the fake emails. His jaw clenched. "She contacted me too," he said. "Rena sent me doctored photos, supposedly proving you were cheating on me." Marley's mouth dropped open. Jalen pulled out his phone and showed her the images. Clearly fake, poorly edited. Her face had been pasted onto another woman's body. Of course I didn't believe it, he said. But your parents saw them. They believe it. Or want to. Marley felt a fresh wave of nausea wash over her. They're trying to destroy us, she whispered. That's when the decision was made. They hired private security for the wedding. Dahlia helped them submit formal photos of Lorna, Ellis, and Rena to the venue, instructing that none of them be allowed in under any circumstances. Hurt. Deeply. But Marley wasn't about to let them sabotage the one thing that still brought her joy. The morning of the wedding arrived with a strange tension in the air, equal parts dread and joy. The venue was a serene garden just outside Clearwick. Simple, elegant, and filled with wildflowers. Marley stood in the bridal suite, adjusting her veil. Guests were arriving. Security was already in place. At 2:15 there was a soft knock at the door. A guard entered, lowering his voice. "Miss Riven," he said cautiously. "We've just detained a young woman trying to sneak in through the back gate. She matches the photo you gave us. It's your sister." Marley's heart raced. "Was she alone?" she asked. "Yes," the guard replied. "But she had a tote bag. Inside was a large can of red paint." The room spun slightly. Marley sat down on the edge of the vanity bench, her chest tight. "She brought paint," she repeated, stunned. "She was going to destroy the wedding." The guard nodded solemnly. "Do you want us to call the sheriff?" Marley stared at the floor for a long moment, the weight of the past year pressing down on her. "No," she said quietly. "Just escort her off the property. Make sure she doesn't come back. And check if my parents tried to sneak in too." The guard nodded and left. Marley sat still, willing herself not to cry. Her best friend, Solene, came in and crouched beside her. "What happened?" she whispered. Marley looked her in the eye. "Rena tried to sneak in with a can of paint. She wanted to ruin everything." Solene's eyes widened. "Then you've already won," she said firmly. "They're still trying to stop your happiness. And they can't." Solene helped her up, smoothed her veil, and hugged her tightly. "This is your day, Marley. The day you marry the man who stood by you through everything. That's what matters." Minutes later, Marley stepped into the garden. Her Uncle Vincent walked her down the aisle. The sun filtered through the trees, casting a golden glow over the white chairs and fresh blooms. Jalen stood at the altar, eyes locked on hers. In that moment, all of the chaos melted away. The betrayal, the lawsuits, the humiliation. None of it mattered anymore. The ceremony was simple, sincere, and full of love. They exchanged vows about strength, loyalty, and choosing each other through every storm. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, the crowd erupted in applause. Marley laughed through her tears. For the first time in months she felt light, free. The reception was everything she had dreamed of. Soft lights twinkled overhead, the music was lively, and the air buzzed with laughter and love. Guests danced, toasted, and celebrated them without hesitation. Solene gave a heartfelt speech that had everyone reaching for tissues. "To Marley," she said, raising her glass, "who stood up for herself and found a love that stood with her." That line stayed with Marley. She looked around the room, filled with people who had chosen to show up, not out of obligation, but because they cared. There were no staged smiles, no stiff silence, just warmth. Later that night, Marley and Jalen walked hand in hand under the stars, rice still tangled in her curls as they made their grand exit. The venue faded behind them, glowing in the distance. Her sister had tried to ruin that moment, but she failed. So had her parents. Marley had walked through fire. And she didn't just survive. She created joy out of the ashes. The honeymoon was quiet and healing. They stayed in a sleepy coastal town far from Clearwick, where the waves were constant and peace finally found them. Marley turned off her phone. No court dates, no emails. Just sand between her toes and Jalen's hand in hers. For the first time in over a year, she rested. truly rested. When they returned home, they moved into a small apartment just outside the city. They used the remainder of the wedding fund for a down payment. It wasn't glamorous, but it was theirs. Marley painted the walls herself. Jalen built bookshelves. Their wedding photos filled the space. Every room a small reminder that love had won. That peace could be chosen even after war. A few weeks later, Marley ran into her cousin Lana at the grocery store. "Did you hear about Rena's wedding?" Lana asked. Marley raised an eyebrow. "No. We're not in touch." Lana hesitated. "Your parents took out a loan. It's happening at the Silverstone Grand downtown. They're flying in a celebrity chef and everything." Marley let out a quiet laugh. Course. Even if it meant sinking into debt, they'd make a spectacle out of Rena's big day. "Are you going if she invites you?" Lana asked cautiously. Marley looked her straight in the eye. "She tried to destroy my wedding with a can of paint." "No. I won't be attending." The invitation never came. Word spread. People noticed. Several relatives declined Rena's invitation, not just because of the drama, but because they had watched how Marley was treated. Some stayed silent. Others were open about their discomfort. The sparkle that used to follow Rena everywhere seemed to dim. And her parents, their reputation took a quiet hit. The loan they took out became family gossip. Not malicious, just sobering. Everyone knew they had bet everything on one daughter while trying to erase the other. But it didn't work. Because Marley was still standing. And more than that, she was thriving. She and Jalen kept building their life together. Their home became a sanctuary. Weekends were spent assembling furniture, planting flowers in the tiny balcony box, and laughing over burnt pancakes. There were still hard days. Holidays passed without a single message from her parents. Birthdays came and went in silence. First it stung. The absence was loud. But over time the silence became peace. She didn't miss the manipulation. She didn't crave the guilt. She no longer needed people who only showed up when she stayed small and obedient. She had outgrown them. Sometimes Jalen asked if she thought her family would ever reach out. "Maybe one day," Marley would say softly. "But it would take more than an apology. It would take actual change. And I don't see that happening anytime soon." Rena's wedding came and went. Champagne fountains, designer gowns. A quartet flew in from across the country. But whispers of Marley's story lingered in the air. No one forgot. Because even if people didn't say it out loud, they knew who had stood in truth, and who had used lies to cover failure. As Marley curled up one evening in their living room, flipping through their wedding album with Jalen beside her, she felt something she hadn't in a long time: pride. She had faced humiliation, violence, and betrayal. But she never lowered herself to their level. She never let them define her. And because of that, she had built something unbreakable. "Do you think we'll ever let anyone stay in the guest room?" Jalen joked one night, struggling with a wobbly side table. Marley grinned. "Maybe. Someday. But only if they bring love through the door, not drama." They laughed together. And the table, like them, stood firm. Marley had learned something precious. Family isn't defined by blood. It's built through choice, through kindness, through the people who celebrate your light instead of dimming it. She didn't get closure from her parents. She never received an apology from Rena. But she had gained so much more. Peace, respect, a home built on truth, and a partner who never let go of her hand. The $45,000 fund had given her more than a wedding. It gave her freedom. From control. From shame. From the toxic belief that love requires sacrifice. She didn't lose her family. She found herself. And in the end, that was everything. Marley Riven.